Time for our Week 17 Fantasy Championship top 36 running back rankings. Let's hop right into the first tier of five guys: Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, James Cook, and Bijan Robinson. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the first five players. They're all tier one studs, all at least around 20 points per game, must starts. I'm going to cover the elephant in the room: Jahmyr Gibbs, my running back two this week, a performance that might have cost people their chance at winning it all. I'm so sorry. He kind of hurt me too. I have him in a pretty big league, and it seems that it's gonna be a miracle for me to win it all with Jahmyr Gibbs dropping around like 6 PPR points. Really fumbled the bag. I don't really have much else to say, but Christian McCaffrey, the guy ahead of him, my clear RB1, hopefully has a better week than Jahmyr Gibbs had. 49ers, of course, I've talked about in the wide receiver video, is playing in the highest scoring point total of the week against Chicago. We all know what he can do on a week-to-week basis. You know, we know how good Christian McCaffrey is, so you're starting him as an RB1 easily. Chan, kind of a mini Christian McCaffrey, but on a much worse offense with Quinn Ewers starting a quarterback. I still think it's a good matchup versus Tampa Bay, and I think he's going to be just fine regardless of who's playing quarterback, just based on his receiving volume out of the backfield. James Cook, great option as well. We know how good he is, one of the best running backs in the league. Bills are going to lean on him. Josh Allen's a little banged up, and it's a big game versus Philadelphia in a game where weather could really kind of tip the scale in the favor of James Cook if they decide to run the ball a lot, which we know the Bills already like to do in the first place. Bijan Robinson showed me the last few weeks, he's the last guy in this tier, that it doesn't matter who starts at quarterback. He's going to be a beast regardless. I think he is as matchup proof as literally anybody, just like Christian McCaffrey. The Rams rank fifth best versus the position, though. Slight worry for me, but I think you got to play him regardless, and you kind of hope that the Falcons are playing from behind and that Bijan gets a lot of dump offs, gets a lot of receiving work out of the backfield. Okay, just a tier below, we have Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, and Ashton Jeanty. A little bit of a bigger tier, but Saquon Barkley is peaking at the right time. 18, 17, and 21 points over the last three. Broken off a couple of big runs in that 3 games as well, and now faces the defense that has been prone to that all season long. Buffalo gives up the fourth most points to running back, so I think that you're excited for Saquon Barkley in this matchup. Jonathan Taylor, this is the one that makes me a little nervous. Jacksonville ranks second best versus running backs, and he is clearly limited by the quarterback play of Phillip Rivers. Defenses are stacking the box to stop him. I just can't have him any lower than this. He's due for a massive game. We know he can break off massive runs. We know he can run for over 200 yards. He did it last year when I think Anthony Richardson was on the field, or maybe I can't remember who was starting at quarterback to end the year, but he was a league winner last year. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up in week 17 and wins managers a lot of money. Josh Jacobs playing in the night game on Saturday versus Baltimore, hoping for a big bounce back after a really disappointing week, which Emmanuel Wilson saw. We saw him come in after Josh Jacobs fumbled. We just hope he's able to hold on to the ball and he's able to be effective despite the kind of injury that's been lingering in the last couple of weeks with him. Ashton Jeanty, Chase Brown, beautiful matchups. Both draw the second and third worst defenses in terms of fantasy points per game to running back. Jeanty tore up Houston last week, which nobody does. Chase Brown scored 3 touchdowns last week and is having a great end to the season. Over his last 8 games, he is averaging 20.5 PPR points per game. Elite. I am rolling with Jeanty and Chase Brown based on talent and the upside that they possess, and the matchup, of course, playing the second and third worst teams in terms of fantasy points given up to running backs. Kyron Williams, Travis Etienne, and RJ Harvey closing out my top 12. RJ Harvey is sticking in here as my RB13. I know I'm kind of cheating a little bit once again as, kind of a back-end RB1, but I think Harvey has kind of earned his stay here, and it showed on Christmas night. Managed to come away with just over 18 PPR points in a game that Denver really struggled to score. He was really the only guy in this offense that did anything whatsoever. The only Bronco who was stat worthy. Great if you started him. I think you got to feel good about it, considering what the Broncos put on display on Christmas night. Kyron Williams kind of dropping a tier here, but he is a good floor play. He is as good of a floor play as you're going to get from an RB1. Always good for a touchdown or 2 per game. 13 total touchdowns on the year. Only reason I have him lower is because Corum has really into his role the last 5 weeks or so. I still love him, though, in a matchup that's pretty decent against Atlanta, who ranks the 17th worst versus running backs. Let's talk Travis Etienne. He's sneaking in as my RB12 in the RB1 territory. Has been phenomenal this year. I'm just going to come out flat and say it. It's been my biggest miss of the 2025 season. I've been pretty outspoken about that. Returned to form completely this year. Basically 1,300 total yards, 13 touchdowns. The Jaguars running back one, walking into a game where the Jaguars can pretty much seal the division away from the Texans and, win that game, get them possibly closer to the number 1 overall seed if Denver were to lose next week to the Chargers. Moving on to RB2s, my clear higher-end RB2 plays: Bucky Irving, Derrick Henry, Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, and Marion Hampton. Bigger tier here, but let's talk about Javonte Williams. managed a decent day before he left with an injury. 11 PPR points. Could have been a lot worse in this game. He was able to find the end zone early on, so it didn't really matter too much when he left. It didn't exactly kill you, but of course, you were hoping for more if he was able to stay healthy. Marion Hampton and Derrick Henry play Saturday afternoon. Looking like Lamar won't play. Not great for Derrick Henry, but I think they will probably lean on Derrick Henry even more, so it kind of evens out. Marion Hampton looks like he's going to have a big workload versus the tough Houston defense. Kamani Vidal hasn't practiced all week and is questionable going into Saturday's game. If he plays, I don't think he's going to be, too much of a factor and take away too much from a Marion Hampton. I am playing a Marion Hampton with confidence just based on the workload. Bucky Irving is my highest ranked guy here. I get it. Last two games have been incredibly frustrating after him scoring 16 in his previous two after returning from injury. I am rolling with him in a good matchup though. I can understand the hesitancy and want to rank him lower, but I'm having Bucky Irving. I'm betting on the talent and just betting on the overall matchup in general. Ramondre Stevenson is here, assuming Travion Henderson misses this one. He sustained a concussion, I believe, last week early on in the game versus the Ravens, and I really doubt that he plays this week. They're probably going to want to keep him healthy going into the playoffs and do their best to make a deep playoff run. Stevenson gets a bad Jets defense. They rank fifth worst versus running back, so I think if you have Ramondre Stevenson, you can play him with confidence as long as Travion Henderson misses as a mid to high end RB2. Just before the back end RB2s, I have DeAndre Swift and the two Steeler running backs, Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. DeAndre Swift is locked into a 55-45, 60-40 split with Kyle Monangai, depending on the week, depending on kind of the game script and situation of it. Reliable floor week to week and easily more exciting and good matchups. This Sunday, he gets one of those matchups versus San Francisco. Wouldn't shock me if he finishes inside the top 10 running backs of the week just based on the matchup and the combined point total that is projected. Warren and Gainwell is easily the biggest surprises of the season this year. I thought the Steelers' offense was going to be terrible, especially early on in the year. Both have been incredibly efficient, though, productive and reliable most of the year, and especially the past 4 to 5 weeks. Now with DK Metcalf suspended, gone the last two games, I think they both have big games. I think they're both going to be involved, especially Kenneth Gainwell out of the backfield as a receiver, as he already has been. I think they're both going to be pretty productive and both good RB2 plays against Cleveland this Sunday with limited weapons. All right, let's close out the RB2 range with Tyron Tracy, Dylan Sampson, and Kenneth Walker. All three pretty interesting plays, in my opinion. Tracy has been quietly good since Scadaboo went down for the season, and now he gets a great matchup in the final week versus the Raiders. Big time upside, especially with his receiving ability. Similarly, we have Dylan Sampson sneaking in here inside the top 24. Unfortunately, we saw Quinshon Judkins go down with a really, really ugly injury last week. Praying he gets back to full health, full strength next year, and we're able to see him step on the field and be the player that he was before. Dylan Sampson steps in, and we have already seen what he can do as a starter. From what we saw week one, I believe he had like 6 to 8 catches, had like 50, 60 receiving yards. We know he's going to be heavily utilized in the receiving game, like I talked about. And with increased touches, I love him as an underrated top 24 guy. Kenneth Walker, tough one for me. Great game last week versus LA, versus the Rams in that, I believe, Thursday night game in week 16, which if you started him, you probably loved that he was in your lineup. And if you had him on your bench, which I think a lot of people did, you are kind of kicking yourself, but at the same time, you're not because he's been so inconsistent all year. It's another great matchup versus a Carolina run defense that has struggled all year long. I am just skeptical, though. He's been inconsistent all year long, and I don't want to bet on him if I have better options. One of the riskier plays inside the top 24 this week for me. A couple of big names headlining the high-end RB3s, and some of the guys I kind of debated throwing inside the top 24. Woody Marks, Breece Hall, and Rico Dowdle. Obvious flaws with all of them. Breece Hall has been horrendous lately. He now gets a New England defense that gives up the third least amount of fantasy points to the running back position. I would just rather go in a different direction. Rico Dowdle, on the other hand, he retook his role back last week in Carolina. My only worry is the Seattle defense stacking the box and daring Bryce Young to beat them in this one, kind of stifling Rico Dowdle. Not a bad play, though, just a bad matchup. Woody Marks, on the other hand, is sort of the same, but with less upside. Not a great offense. Bad offensive line, not used in the passing game, which doesn't really make much sense to me. And maybe next year we can revisit that and be more realistic about kind of what his role is going to be in this Texans offense, hoping that they improve at least. But nonetheless, he's really hard to trust against a Chargers defense who doesn't give up much points at all to the running back position. Like I said, they rank 4th among fantasy points given up to the running back position. Some mid-range RB3s for me. Blake Corum, Kyle Monangai, Aaron Jones, Michael Carter, and Tony Pollard. Aaron Jones coming away with 15 fantasy points on Christmas Day. Solid game despite the Vikings only having 160 total yards of offense. So if you have him in your lineup, you're probably happy about what he gave you considering what all the other Vikings players did. Kyle Monangai and Blake Corum, they're images of each other. The clear 1B in their backfields. Limited upside, of course, because of their lack of work in the receiving game. But they're completely fine plays, though. I think overall, just as a floor play at least, they're a decent bet for a touchdown or two some weeks and in the right game environment. Tony Pollard, been hot as of late, run for over 100 yards in 3 straight games. It's a decent matchup versus New Orleans. I don't hate it, but it's the Tennessee offense, and they have been pretty bad most of the year. So I wouldn't be surprised once again if Tony Pollard kind of returns to the form that he has, other than the previous 3 games that he has had kind of hot here down the stretch. But if you're kind of betting on a guy who's ending the year hot, then I don't mind Tony Pollard in this matchup. Michael Carter here, who was someone who was hoping to have a lot higher coming into this week, especially after I believe Bam Knight went down. He's going to miss the rest of the season. He just split too many snaps with Amari DiMercato, and that's never good. However, this is a matchup versus Cincinnati that is really juicy. They're dead last versus the running back position, and it will likely be a high scoring game. I talked about it so many times, 52.5 over under. I think it's going to be a game with a lot of points. Jacoby Brissett hopefully just targeting Michael Carter out of the backfield 5, 6, 7 times in this game, kind of creating that floor that we all like already as a receiving threat out of the backfield, and maybe he finds the end zone, increasing that volume just a little bit more. The final 4 I have here, Isaiah Pacheco, who already played, Zach Charbonnet, Tyjae Spears, and Chuba Hubbard. I had Chris Rodriguez here, who I kind of mentioned in the Christmas Day video, but he did end up playing. Ja'Cory Cross-Camara went crazy. I hope that maybe if you had both of them on your bench, you put JCM in your lineup and you were able to reap the benefit of it because the Cowboys defense once again showed just how bad they are. Quickly on Pacheco. He sucked on Christmas night. That's my bad. 3 PPR points. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Not very good at all. Kansas City offense was a disaster. We don't really need to talk about that anymore. Tyjae Spears, not the flashiest guy here, but we are almost out of RB3 territory, so we can't ask for too much. He had 21.5 PPR points last week, and you just hope he gets a lot of catches out of the backfield, a lot of targets out of the backfield. Other than that, though, he isn't very attractive, especially being in this Tennessee offense. Zach Charbonnet, just a bet to score a touchdown, just like a lot of these guys in this tier. It's a good matchup, but Kenneth Walker looks to be gaining steam down the stretch here. Looks to be the better running back overall, and I think he's going to be I think Charbonnet is going to be the least other running backs used in this game when it comes to him or Kenneth Walker. Chuba Hubbard looked like he was starting to regain his rollback, but that came to a screeching halt the past 2 weeks. Only 9 and 7 touches in back-to-back weeks. You can safely have him as a desperation touchdown play. And, maybe if they start to use him more like they did 2-3 weeks ago, maybe it's a fine play, but at this point, he's a desperation. You really, really don't want him in your lineup. That is going to be all for my top 36 week 17 running backs. Hope I helped you guys out. I hope you guys win your fantasy championship this week with a couple of big plays, a couple of big starts from a lot of these guys in the rankings. And I hope to see you guys very, very soon. Happy championship week. And I hope you guys win your matchup, of course, win that money.